Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Tarot Podcast, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, healer, tarot reader, and professional witch. And today I'm joined by my guest, Kitty Garcia. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Kitty, and I'm a writer, creative collaborator, and operations coordinator. I'm also the token extrovert in the little creative studio that I like to call Pancake Copycats because just because we we work with artists, witches, educators, neurodivergent creatives, and we typically produce podcasts and other behind the scenes magic. Uh, I've been working with Camille, and I'm here because we're going to talk about what's been going on behind the podcast. Just a little sneak peek.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for being here, doing some it was like in front of the scenes. So that doesn't really make sense. Now you're like on stage. That's our like
When you were saying
amount.
the opening, like the
Yeah.
podcast opening, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this slide.
You know this phrase that I've said hundreds of times now. Yeah.
I
Okay.
could
Well,
sing
yeah,
along to this opening.
that's right. So yeah, if you hear this episode and you want to be a guest, you can fill out my guest inquiry and I'll reach out. If you want to connect with Kitty further, you can go to their Instagram, which is instagram.com/sillykittymeows. And they do have client spots available. So if you are witchy, creative, and you're interested in working with them, you can find that link on their Instagram. And they want to work with more witchy clients in 2026. So
Manifest.
check it out. Yeah. And then if you haven't listened to my other seasons yet, you can check those out. We are here in season 20, if you can believe it. Well, yeah. So I'm curious, Kitty, where do I want to start? Well, what's your like first deck story? How did you get it? Was it tarot? Was it oracle? How did you find it or how did it find you?
My first deck is the OG Rider White deck back in college. But only because I saw my brother was playing this game called Persona 3, and they were featuring, like, the characters were featured as the major arcana cards. And depending on like which card was assigned to them, like the power or whatever
Mhm.
is based on their card. And I'm like,
Okay.
oh, that's so cool. So I was like, oh, I want to check that out. And as most queer people have done, we started from like Greek mythology and further into the the mountain of what is more occult than this. So yeah,
Yeah.
tarot was right there at the top, and it felt really um I felt really connected with the cards because the art, first and foremost, is very symbolic, and it's very it, it feels like it gives words where I don't know what words to use just yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love the like visual medium of it as well, even though I'm always like reading the tarot guidebook. Um, to me, I love the fact that like that I get to have 78 art pieces in every deck. Um, it's very, very cool. All right. Well,
Do
yeah,
you
what
remember the first card you've ever pulled?
oh no, I don't. I mean, I don't even really know when I got my first deck. I have like guesses. I can like
Whoa.
find pictures, so I'm like, okay, well, it was before then, like of cards that I pulled. But yeah, I don't even, I feel very like I don't even know how I found it or how I even knew what it was. Um, because it was much before I ever like identified as a witch, like, or
Mm.
anything like that. I think back in like 2017, 2018. So, I mean, not that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like I have my first deck still. Um, and I kind of know what drew me to that deck, but also it was like not in a witchy store. There were no other decks. So it was just very like, what is this thing? This is really cool. Oh, I like this art. And I was like, I want it. I will get it.
We
Um,
want it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't know why. I don't even know what it is, but this is really cool. Um, and yeah, and I know that I used like apps for a while that would like where I could pull like a card a day that I would have on my phone because I'm like now I carry my decks with me like almost whenever I leave the house, I usually have a deck with me, especially if I like travel for multiple days. But at the time, I did not do that. And so I would pull decks on the like I think the Golden Thread Tarot or Labyrinthos like had apps where you could pull cards and they would like kind of tell you like
The
here's
ancient
some
apps.
words. Yeah, the ancient apps. I know that like were like a lot of them like not great or just like a giant ad pop up or whatever.
Oh,
But I liked that it was like it could log it for you so I could go back and be like, oh yeah, last Tuesday, like this is the card I pulled. Because that's still a thing that I'm like, I mean, now I have a podcast, so I can go back and look at those. But where I'm like, I do not keep like a tarot diary like they say
mhm,
you should, where it's like, oh, I wrote to this spread and like, blah, blah, blah. I'll do it sometimes if it's like I'm doing it for a pagan holiday or for like the
mhm,
start of the year, like I'll write it down, but I find it very
mhm.
like tedious. And usually by the time I'm writing it down, I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. Like it feels
You're
like
already
two
past.
different modes. It's like there's the part of me that like knows what the tarot is about, and then there's like the part that writes it down. Um, so I don't know if that makes
There
sense
are
at all,
two
but
wolves inside you.
yeah,
The
exactly.
one
And
that
I'm
pulls the
like,
card, the one that writes about it.
yeah. Well, and I feel like it's like the part of me that understands like, oh, this is exactly like what's going on, and like this makes sense. It's like once I switch into writing, I'm like, here's the card. This is what the deck says. Like the guidebook says, and then I like lose all like my
Let's
kind of like
overanalyze what this card means.
yeah, pretty much. Or I'll just be like, let me write exactly what's in the book, which is like not really but I wanted to, because if I did that, I could just look at the book. So yeah, it usually kind of like takes me out of it to like write it down. So I mean I do
But
like as you know, I just take pictures and then I'm like, oh okay, well that kind of helps. Um and now I have the podcast to review. Like this week I looked back at
with
my
hundreds of
2020.
episodes, by the way.
Truly. And I mean, I don't listen to my episodes very often, but I do go back and look at pictures. And then this week I listened to my like 2025 tarot spread that I did on January 1st of last year. And I was like, this is so interesting. And got to listen to myself talk about it. Um, so I could review it for the year.
It's like a little time capsule.
Yeah, it's funny. I've listened to podcasts for a long time. The first podcast I listened to, I started in
Mhm.
2006 as a
Uh-huh.
listener. Back in the day when you had to like put an
Back in the day.
RSS feed like on, I used to put it on my like video iPod and put like plug it into my car when I went to work to like listen to it. It was like
Hmm.
I had to put it in iTunes like or whatever. I don't even know how I was
Hmm.
doing it at the time. Because it was like, yeah, my phone didn't have internet. That and they're still going. So they've been going for like 20 years now, which is wild, which is a Harry Potter podcast. So that was my like inner witch as a child was like learning about Harry Potter and listening to podcasts about Harry Potter. Um, I don't know where I was going with that, but we were talking about podcasts. I don't know.
I think what's fascinating is that we both used apps to make tarot more accessible. Because if you think
Mm,
about it, a lot of people have trouble getting into the practice because they're like, oh no, there are like 78 cards. I have to figure out what each of them mean. And
yeah.
what if I make a mistake? Am I a fake witch?
Yeah.
Am I a faker?
Yeah.
Am
Right.
I
And there's
just
no one that's going to
doing
tell you
this?
like this
Yeah,
is it, you're a
because
certified witch. Like, um, that's like the
don't
whole
get a birth
thing.
certificate of when you were born witch.
Yeah. I think also it's like when it's on your phone, it feels like it's like having like a Kindle or whatever, where it's like I could read all these certain books,
Mm-hmm.
but no one's gonna know what I'm reading. Like no one can see
Mm-hmm.
the cover, like no one knows that I'm a secret witch,
Mm-hmm.
unless like they're on my phone. But I think there was something for me that was like before I was ready to come out of the broom
Mm-hmm.
closet, it was like, oh, it's
The
like I'm
broom
just
closet.
yeah, have you not heard that? I love when people say that. When they come out of the broom
Well, now
closet
I'm gonna
as a
be
witch.
using that line.
Yeah. And so it's like, yeah, when did you like come out as a witch? And now I like call myself a professional witch because like I think it's
So many
funny.
closets to come out of.
Yeah, so many, so many. Um, and but yeah, I do think like the app aspect of it, like you said, right? It kind of like it gives you something, it like logs it for me, which like great because like I said, I
Mm-hmm.
don't like doing that part of it. I'm not, it doesn't feel intuitive to me. And then it could kind of like, yeah, give me some ideas that felt like there was, I don't know, and like some level of like reassurance or verification to it.
It also gives you like an idea of like, oh, it's not that hard, or it's not
Yeah,
that the cards aren't that intimidating. They just want to tell you stuff,
yeah.
and all you have to do is listen to what they have to say.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure the app that I used, like the like what they showed on the tarot card was like very simple. It was like a line drawing of
Mm-hmm.
like again like the high priestess or whatever it was. It's like actually there
Mm-hmm.
weren't a lot of symbols, and I feel like
Mm-hmm.
for me that was helpful because it was like, oh, like we're just bare bones. We're like simplifying it down to just like here's what it
Mm-hmm.
is. Whereas like yeah, in the Rider-Waite-Smith traditional deck, it is there's so many symbols. And I think I definitely found that overwhelming at first, or I felt like I try to read so many books about how to learn tarot. Like, I bought so many books that I did not read about like kitchen table tarot. Like, do you know, like they would tell me do a card a day. I could do that part of it, but the idea that you have to like memorize it, I was like,
But you
ew.
don't have to memorize it,
No, no. And it's so
right?
funny because now it feels like in the same way, I remember I have a friend who's like really into foraging
Mm-hmm.
and like knows a lot of mushrooms and plant
Mm-hmm.
identification. And I remember asking her like, how do you like keep track? And she was just like, I
Read a
don't know.
book.
I just like, yeah, I mean, that is what some people do.
Yeah,
And she was
but
like,
guys.
I don't know. I just like look at it and once I understand it, like that's it. It's in my brain forever. And like there is a
Mm-hmm.
level of that I feel with tarot now where it's like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have to memorize it. But because I've looked at it so many times, and I've seen many different iterations of it in like different contexts. There's just something about it that makes sense now that I didn't have to like sit and do flashcards,
Mm-hmm.
or like
Like
read a book where
friends.
you,
The more you hang out with friends, the more you're able to tell, like like when you're trying to introduce a friend to another friend, so that they can like the more you know about that friend, the more you
Mm.
can like hype said friend to another person because
Yeah,
you've hung around them so many times that you can like,
yeah,
right.
yeah. Well, and that, yeah, I want you to like go further on that because I know we were talking earlier that you were saying
Mm.
that like there's something about tarot that feels like you're like introduced, get to know the high priestess, right? Like, good to know this friend, this card, that something about that feels like, yeah, more approachable or just like more intuitive.
I feel
Um,
like because the first card I ever drew, because I remember the mundane, the
you
little
remember.
trivial
Okay.
things in my life. Noticing is an art. So the first card I drew ever in 2009 was the Empress card.
Oh,
And
yeah.
like it felt like pulling her from that deck because the store had like a loose deck so that you can touch the tarot cards
Yeah.
because there are people who there are witches who believe that you shouldn't be just manhandling decks out of nowhere, so they have like a loose deck so that you can just look at pictures and
Yeah.
get a feel for it. So the first one I drew was the Empress, and it made me feel like, oh, you do want me to get to know you. But I feel like
Yeah.
if I pull maybe if I pulled the Three of Swords,
You would have been
I
like, no,
wouldn't
I'm
have
good.
Like, oh, or maybe the tower. I'd be like, ugh,
Yeah. Yeah. Because,
maybe
yeah,
next
the Empress, I'm
time.
like, Empress is like warm and cozy or like
It's
nurturing
like,
or
come to
like,
mommy, let me
yeah.
teach you.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're like, oh, okay. Sounds
Like,
great.
okay,
Yeah.
toss,
Now I'm
toss.
like, now I'm like, I'm gonna scour my photos to see if I can find see if I can find the first photo I took of my deck at least. Because knowing me, like, that's when I did it. Yeah, there's a YouTuber that I watch, Jess on
Mm.
Roots and Refuge, who's like a homesteady gardening. That's another aspect of my life, as you know. And they talk about that the first time that they kind of like started doing YouTube videos was because they
Mhm,
turned on their camera because they wanted to showcase their garden so that they could look at it in the winter when they were sad
mhm,
and depressed that they didn't have a garden and that they
mhm,
could be like, oh, like I remember that, like to kind of just be like, yeah, to be that like warm, cozy hug, to be like, see, like the garden
mhm,
season's lovely and like you did all of that. And like, I know it's winter right now, but like soon it will be summer again. And there is like an aspect of that that feels very like related to this, of kind of just that like
mhm,
with the podcast and with this like wild idea that I had of like, yeah, I'm gonna do
mhm.
a podcast, put it out every day, Monday through Friday, even though like
The
no one does
dedication.
that. And like people thought I was crazy. They were like, you're gonna do what? You went from no podcast to 5 days a week. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, I'm gonna do it. Um, that there was a part of that of like, well, I'm just gonna like document the journey. Like I just want to try it and like see how it goes. That feels very cool to now get to look back at my year and be like, I did 260, today is 63 episodes.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, no one made me.
No one
Most of the
held a
time,
gun at
people
your
were
head.
like,
They're like,
that's,
record the podcast.
yeah, they were like, you're gonna do what? Even like my own therapist was like, are you burned out? Like, that's a lot. Like 3 months in, I was like, no, I don't know. I still love it. And I still feel like, oh no, I'm like obsessed with talking about the tarot. So like, I haven't run out of ideas. Um,
And
but
that's how you
just,
know you're having a great time, because
yeah,
I work with a lot of people who have podcasts, and the biggest issue they have is, I don't know what to talk about. But I feel like with tarot, you do not run out of things to talk about.
no. Well,
That
yeah, I remember that like I think it was in January, one of my
mm-hmm,
friends, Doris, so she was on the podcast. Her and
mm-hmm,
I, we've known each other for a couple of years and we've done co-working every week where we both
mm-hmm,
on our computers at home say, I'm gonna
mm-hmm,
work on this, okay? And I'm gonna work on this, okay? And then we turn off our video and our audio and then we do the work. And then we like check
mm-hmm.
in at the end to be like, did you do the thing? And then we're like, yeah, or like, oh, it took longer than I thought, or like, that's how most of it goes, but some accountability. And her and I remember when I talked about it last year or at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
of 2025, I was like, I have so many ideas. And we like made a list of like 20 different ideas of like what to talk about on the podcast. Cause I was like, I would talk about this or this. And that was like what started my like podcast inspiration doc was just
The
being like,
rabbit hole.
yeah, where we were like, oh, I have so many ideas, like let's write it down. And that really like helped me form basically like the seasons for this year where I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I can talk about all the major arcana cards. I can talk about, I knew I wanted to do that season on Harry Potter to talk about the different kinds of divination in Harry Potter, mostly because I was like, I'm interested. I want to like scour the books and like see what was in there. And like also because of like the terrible perception of divination that's in the books or like that the characters have. But I was like, oh, I'm intrigued by this and like I want to research it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that also was helpful to have someone to be like, no, you have a lot of ideas. Like just like start, write it down and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of build from there. And again, you got to see some of the behind the scenes where I was like, okay, I had these ideas. Or like, ooh, I don't know what I'm doing next, and I'm gonna figure it out tomorrow when I like press record and like see what happens. Um,
Or
yeah,
I'm gonna be like,
sometimes.
you know what would be dope is if you
Yeah, well, I know the
talked
Queer
about queer
Deities season.
deities.
Yeah, that season because I was going on the Queer Joy Summit, and we were like scheming about that, and you were working on
The
that too,
schemes.
scheming, and we were like, ooh, queer deities like that, like yeah, that would be really fun. I feel like there's enough of them. Like let's
I feel like
do it.
tarot is inherently queer.
Yeah. So tell me more about that, because I'm like, yeah, I agree, but I like want you to like flesh it out a bit more. Because I
I
think we
feel
even
like
talked about this.
I feel like tarot is queer only because the spectrum of how deep it goes is as vast as sexuality itself. Because like you know how like the angry mob is always, oh, you're just inventing something new and call adding more to the letters. And like now what? What like you have more pronouns? Like but really if the tarot deck can have 70 cards and have meaning like different meanings and you can still add more based on what you intuitively experience, then like who are we to police what people are like call themselves to be, right? So I yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
think
so
especially because it's like, yeah, you can have the same card across decks, but it's depicted very differently, or like it feels
mhm.
different. Like I have cards where I'm like in different decks, I feel very differently about them, even though it's the same card.
I
Where I'm
feel
like,
like the
ooh,
Hierophant is ace. The Hierophant might be ace or the
yeah,
Chariot.
I love the chariot card. I dressed as the chariot card. Did you know that? I dressed as the chariot when I went to my therapist who tarot retreat, which like also is a thing that really kicked us off because I was like, oh my God, there's like other people
Ooh.
obsessed with tarot that want to just like figure out how to fit it into every aspect of their life. Cool. Um, but yeah, on the last day, we like had a like fancy dinner and it was like dress is your favorite tarot card. And I love the chariot card, even though I'm like, I feel like not everyone feels super positively about it. It's very like charge ahead, right? It's very how I did this podcast. I was like, I'm doing it. I'm doing Monday through Friday. Have I ever done a podcast? No, doesn't matter. Gonna do it.
I have
Um,
the audacity.
yeah, I was like, I listen to podcasts. I know what makes a good podcast, or at least what I think is interesting. I have interest and like I'm able to figure things out. Sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah. Now I'm just like, oh yeah, I want like I am just like there's so many different deck ideas. Also, like talking to people about tarot, I feel like other people have so many ideas. Like people have told me like a deck that they would
Mhm.
want to make one day, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Please do it.
Also, Camille made this workshop where she like led how to make your own tarot deck, and that was like wild because I'm like, what do you mean I can make it with magazines and
Yeah,
stuff I
collage.
find in the wild?
Yeah, and that was another thing that yeah, I sort of like learned that I could do that and then was like, oh, I now I'm obsessed. Like now I want to do it all the time. Now I'm gonna like make a meetup group where like that's what we do. Because
You know, it would
yeah,
be
so I've
so
made like
sweet if you gift
yeah.
a witchy friend a tarot deck you made yourself.
Yeah. And just think about, like people that make like quilts where they're like hundreds of hours have gone into that. I'm like, that's how I feel about a tarot deck, where I'm like blood, sweat, and tears have gone into a 78
Like
card tarot deck.
specifically forage this one image
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make
Well,
this
and that's
card
like,
make sense.
yeah. Well, and yeah, what part of what I talk about in that like collage workshop thing is that like, yeah, sometimes you might try to make a certain card and then sometimes you find images and you're like, I don't know what I'm making, but like this is this is what's coming out. Like this is I want to do something fully based off of this like image. Um, because it just like feels right. Um,
When you
yeah.
taught that workshop and like because I have my special interest because I'm autistic, my special interest is plants and animals
Mm.
among
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah.
Like when you were talking about the cards, I was like, oh, if I make when not if when I make my deck, the sun will be a sunflower, the star will have asters. And like
Mm. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
and
that.
I'm
Oh my
like thinking
gosh.
about, yeah, I have the herb crafting deck where I'm pretty sure the sun is a sunflower in that one.
Yeah, that's
Um,
pretty obvious.
yeah. And I think even right on the Rider Waite Smith card, there's sunflowers with the happy baby on the sun card. There's like
Mm.
sunflowers in the background. Yeah. Yeah, or some cards, yeah, it just feels right where you're like, oh yeah, I've never seen it, but I'm gonna do it. Um, yeah, I was trying to pick decks for like what's the vibe for this session today or this episode. And I like had too many options. I was like, well, we could do plants, we could do animals. We have this one that's colorful. That seems like cute. Like I was just very like, I don't know. I have so many that could fit. I picked also the Citadel one, the like fantasy oracle one, because I was like, I don't know, something about that feels right.
Do the
So we'll
Citadel
see.
one, and I'll pick the one from my Oracle deck, which is
Okay.
D&D themed,
Oh, perfect. There we
and then we
go.
can like build from there. That's so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can have like one tarot card and one Oracle card.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I think about that my like podcast is just called tarot, and I'm like, well, I've definitely like now become like where I'm like, no, Oracle is like in the same like it's the in the same realm, like it's just as
It's a
valid.
sibling.
Yeah, yeah, siblings. Yeah, it makes me think about in like makeup world, they'll be like, your eyebrows, they're not supposed to be twins, they're sisters. Like they can be different, but like it's okay. Like they're related, but
Or
they don't have to be exactly the
butterflies
same.
and moths.
Yeah. Oh,
They're
yeah. Because
both
then we have like the
pollinators.
sun moon energy.
Mm-hmm.
Of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I wanted to talk about when
Hmm.
we met the first time on video that you pulled a card as a vibe check. Do you remember the card you pulled? I do.
Yeah. I
Okay.
got the two of cards. Sorry,
Yeah.
two of cups. The two of
Yeah.
cups.
Two of
Wait,
cups.
I should have should have where is it? I'm trying to find the card because the
Mm.
deck I use is the weird cat deck by Gabrielle Cash. And of course, is it gonna be in the bottom of the deck? No. You know how when you're trying to shuffle, like, where is it? Where is it? And
Yes.
it's just in the bottom. It's like, here. I'm gonna show you. It's these. Wait, does it show?
Oh, there we
They're
go. Yeah.
cats. They're so cute. It's a pink and blue cat.
It's also like very Gemini when I look at it right now. I'm
It
like, oh yeah, it's
is.
very like,
And like my deck is so me because it's so like colorful and cats. All the cats.
yeah.
And when I pulled
Yeah.
that card, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a sign from the
Yeah.
universe.
That's
Because the two
great.
of cup cards is like one of my favorite. Like I have several favorites, but like the two of cups is very like if I want a sign, I'm like if I draw the two of cups, that's a
That's a
definite
good sign.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking back now and being like, okay, that was the beginning of where this began. Like, what do you feel like you learned about the tarot or learned about from like listening to all these podcast episodes so that you can make the show notes? Because, yeah, fun fact, everyone, you listen to every episode
I
and pull the
do.
transcript
I'm
and
the
do the
first
show
one to
notes.
hear
That's
everything that
great.
Camille has to say.
Right.
I feel like the two of cups when I pulled that it was very much the theme, the feel of the podcast because
Yeah.
it really like it's rooted in mutuality and trust and aligned collaboration and it doesn't like it feels easy just as when you have two cups and you can drink together and you can be happy together like it
Mm.
feels very light and like working with you has been like has taught me a lot about tarot because I unlike Camille I don't know the cards like intimately just yet but like now I'm like at least I don't freak out when I pull a swords card like I was so
Yeah. You're like, it's
I
okay. It's
I was
okay.
like back in the day I was like oh, if I pull a swords card I'm dead like
Oh,
but now I'm like oh that's not so bad
yeah.
the Queen of Swords is not trying to kill me
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's giving you some like
Like a perspective on like just as people have different personalities, the deck also has different personalities, and not one of them is evil. Not even the devil card. The devil card, guys. The devil card is not evil. The tower is not evil.
yeah.
So like they can just be very insistent on what they want to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's making me think of what you were saying earlier about like the tarot is sort of inherently queer, where it's like it I think of it as like, yeah, it's like that we all contain multitudes, or that like
Mm.
we can, right, perhaps also maybe that like it's a spectrum, that there's like certain cards are more one way or the other, but like that doesn't mean that you should only look at this card or only look at this card. It's like
Mm-hmm.
no, like looking at them as the whole is like
Mm-hmm.
kind of
And
like the
even the
whole.
upright and reversal.
Yeah.
So it like you don't just have like 78 cards with 78 meanings. You have like plus you have the upright and the reversal. And then you have like the combos. And then we have like when your card jumps out, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that it's not, yeah. It's like again, with I'm like, yeah, it's always interesting. Like you don't I'm like being my special interest right now. I'm like, it's there's just always more to learn or like to get insight on. Um, yeah, I'm curious. Do you have a favorite season of yours that you've worked on, listened to, enjoyed
my
doing?
favorite is the one with plants. Also because the plants also featured like their healing properties and the ritual side of things that will help you like you connect with
Work
a
with
tarot
them?
card, but
Yeah.
you also have the energetic the tarot and plant allies is the season. Like um it shows you how you can like ritualize the inclusion of plants into your practice. Like it was very grounding, and also the deck that you used was so nice.
I
The
know, that's
herb
how I found
crafters
my
tarot.
herb crafting one, because I didn't have a plant deck when I did that season, and I was having to just like research online and find, and I kept coming back to that deck, and I was like, okay, this is that. And yeah, I love that deck too, because it just provides, yeah, so much depth on the plants and the cards. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I know that plant, and it helps me understand the card better. And sometimes
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, I know that card, and now I understand the plant better.
Mm.
Where, yeah, to me too, it feels like, oh, I get to learn. I get to use my knowledge from both sides, from tarot and like plant witchy gardening. And
And
like,
that deck was so light. Like the vibe of that deck is so light.
yeah, yeah, it's so one of my favorites that I like bring around, especially if I know anyone's into plants, like my friend Doris, that's like into herbalism. I was like, oh yes, this is what we were using in like my episode with her. And when I pull cards with her, because she also has a lot of plant knowledge, so sometimes like I will learn things from her just by like
Mhm.
drawing certain cards there. Um, and I think too, like for people that maybe dabble in tarot or tarot curious or kind of like, oh yeah, I have a deck, or yeah, I want to get to know
Mhm.
more, like finding your in, right? Like, oh, I
Mhm.
love cats, so like I'm gonna get a cat deck, or like, oh, I love this. Like even my first deck that I got was
Yeah.
very like the imagery, it's very Pacific Northwest, like hiking vibes, which is like
Mhm.
a vibe here, and like a with me, it felt more approachable to me than like
Mhm.
the Rider Waite. I personally like the Rider Waite Smith, all the yellow on that deck, like I'm like, "Ugh, ugh, not for me." Um,
Well, not anymore that I've seen other decks because they're
yeah, it's
prettier
so like
decks.
sun energy also, and I'm like a very moon energy person that I'm like, no, I want like the dark goth colors. I don't want like I like bright colored decks. Like I have the Desert Illuminations deck that's like very bright, but
Mhm.
I don't. there's like a pink version of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I'm like, I'd get that one. I'd be into that because it's like the
It's
same.
like your
It just like,
Goddess of Love deck.
yeah, it is. I love that deck too. Um, and yeah, some of the decks like that one, it like Gabby Herstick was someone I read their books and like I used to, yeah, I was a Patreon subscriber and so I used to like
Mhm.
do calls with them and stuff and was like, oh my God, I loved that they created a deck, especially because they do collage style stuff. So it was a lot of my interests combined and yeah, and that deck I'm like is unlike any other that I have.
You know
Yeah.
what working with you has done? Because like
What?
every for those of you who don't know, at the end of like every episode, Camille typically pulls out like a tarot of the day, like a card pull.
Yeah.
And I have learned which deck is which just by the art. Like the pattern
Yeah,
recognition
when you
has
see
clicked
it.
in
Yeah.
because I'm like, okay, it's like, okay, so this week, like even if I don't even look at the notes, because Camille is
Yeah.
very organized, like she makes my life so much easier when she just sends me the notes and be like, this is the card I pulled just in case, because I have one deaf ear. So sometimes I'm like, what did she say? What was
Yeah.
her? But
Especially if
like
it's like
now,
the Norse deck or whatever, where it's like
yeah, because
now I'm reading runes and
the
Norwegian.
goddess, Norse goddess rune oracle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not me memorizing your name.
Yeah. No, you didn't. Right. And that again, like, yeah, all my decks are very visually different. That is for sure.
Yeah, but
Um,
those are so neat because like just as you know when a carpenter build something. You don't use a hammer to build an entire house. You need
yeah.
different tools. And I feel like having different decks gives you that ability to like ask certain questions and get the answers that you need. Because it it might just be for me, but like I typically use my Oracle deck when I have heavier questions. But for
Mm.
lighter questions, I like to ask my tarot deck, but only because the color schemes, like the vibe of my deck is different. But I'm sure for some people they'll be like, oh, but if it's something important or something that needs to be deep dive, I need to use my tarot deck. But like for me, it's the opposite because I don't have the spoons to like do a deep dive when I'm already stuck. So I'd be like, Oracle, help me.
Yeah. So you're saying kind of like that the imagery helps guide what deck you use in that way of like,
Mm. Because it makes finding the answer more accessible. So I feel like that's more of what tarot does. Tarot and oracle is it makes finding the answers or like lead you to the answers more accessible because sometimes we get thrown into this world without, you know, a guidebook. We don't know how the world works. But like when we have tools like some people use crystals to divine and some people use uh I don't know, smoke work or bones or stones, or in my culture like um we have like healers that use a basin of water and candle wax and they divine that way. So I feel like having all these tools to help you figure out how the world works in your favor, because the universe will always work in your favor. You're just not aware of it yet. Um, makes living more uh makes it makes being here more grounded. Like it makes you more present because it helps you to notice things. Because when we're in survival mode, we rarely notice things, right? And
yeah.
like when bad things happen in the capitalist hellscape that we're in, we tend not to notice, and tarot will help you notice. It's quite easy because just a picture, like when you look at a picture, like what do you notice? Oh, immediately there's a flower or there's a sun, or like this is what it makes me feel when I draw it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of this like sensory experience. There's so much of being present. I mean, like plants, right, do that too, and kind of like getting to
Mm.
touch them and look at them and colors and where are they. I was kind of thinking of that as like it like sets almost like the context. And then
Mm.
it feels easier to kind of like get the answer from there. I also just think that, yeah, sometimes it's like imagery is just I don't know. I feel like we live in a very wordy society, a very like heady, wanting to have a lot of like rationality and like think it through and I feel like tarot helps me get out of that space and will call
Mm.
me
Right.
out, right, with using a lot of swords when I'm overthinking or when I'm like
Mm.
trying to like plan too far in advance, where it's like, nah, like it's funny when I do the docs that Kitty sees, like just duplicate the doc when I do the next episode and then I kind of like delete things out of it or and
Mm.
I almost always will like delete the which card deck I used because I'm like, well, I don't want it to like incept me. Like I want to like get to the moment and be
Yeah.
like, what deck like feels like the right one? Because and sometimes I just like, oh, I have a new deck, so I'm probably using that one for a while. But I do try to like be intuitive with that aspect as well
You're
because
very intuitive, very high
yeah, it's so like
priestess energy.
yeah. It's definitely like I we were talking about Myers-Briggs earlier and we were talking
Mm.
about me being an INTJ. Like I think like I grew up in a family or even like in a societal space that was like you need data, you need like
You need to
facts,
know
you
what
need
you need to know what you're talking about before you talk about it.
yeah. And I think like it's so funny because like now I love like words and I still like I try to get over the fact of trying to be like perfect with my words, which still feels
Hmm.
hard. But there were definitely times where as a kid I'd be like, I literally cannot speak right now because I'm like, I don't have the right words and like, oh, like that aspect. And I feel like tarot kind of like helps me get over that too, of being like, we're just
Hmm.
gonna look at the pretty pictures and we're just gonna like
Yeah.
feel the vibe. And I know that kind of like the first ways I ever used my intuition, except for maybe kind of like being out and like traveling, because I
Hmm.
did that when I was fairly young, was like going in bookstores. Like was
Hmm.
like, oh, let me go in a bookstore and be like, what section is calling to me? Or like what book? And I used a bookstore. And that's like how I approach a lot of life now, but it felt like I wasn't allowed. I think especially like
Hmm.
as a woman, where it's like, oh, you're gonna like use your
Hmm.
feelings to like live. Like, men have a lot of feelings about that, and like
Hmm.
rationality and um, yeah, I feel like tarot helps me get out of that place where I like feel like I need to have the right thing to say, which is ironic because I feel like yeah, I have to just kind of like let it come through instead of like being like, let me think what I'm gonna say. And as you
Hmm.
probably know, like I have gone from, I used to literally like script my episodes in the beginning. I would like sit in a doc and like write down everything probably that I was gonna like try to talk about, and then I would be like, okay, hit record, and I would like do it. And now I will sit and research during it, or I'll like go grab my deck, or it's become like a lot easier, and I've become more comfortable with just being like, yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna say. Like I have some got some bullet points, but like we'll see what comes up, and even doing like readings with other people, or I think also like outside of the podcast, reading for other
Hmm.
people and having some like confidence in doing that,
Hmm.
um, like showed me that like, yeah, like you can't prepare for redoing a reading with someone because you just don't know like what they're gonna ask or what's gonna come up or what deck. And that like that's okay. Like that I can think
The
on my
deck doesn't
feet.
stutter.
Yeah, and just that like it doesn't, yeah, I can't plan for that and like that's okay. That's like part of being, yeah, using your intuition is that you have to like
Hmm.
feel it in the moment. And so I also think that tarot helped me like refine even just realizing that like, oh, this is intuition, like this is what that is, like when I would be
See, it is
traveling.
the art of noticing. Tarot
Yeah,
makes the art of noticing like more
like a
accessible.
practice. Yeah, and like a thing you can practice
Mm.
as well. Because I think like there were times when I was young that I would use intuition. Like I said, when I would like travel
Mm-hmm.
and you get like a vibe that you're like, uh-oh, I don't know why, but like something's off. Um, that I sort of like would realize that in certain scenarios, or I would allow it like in a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt like other than that,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't really okay. Whereas now I'm like, well, most of my life I live pretty like I'm like into my intuition most of the time. I'm like, what tea am I gonna have? Like, let's see what feels right in the moment, or yeah, or being spending more time in nature or doing tarot, or now I would say like 85% of my life is like, yeah, I'm just gonna like go with whatever my intuition is saying. Um, Especially as a therapist too, because I also don't feel like I can prepare for whatever's going to happen in the
I have
room.
a question for you.
Yeah,
How do you know that it's your intuition?
I think, I mean, I do feel like tarot has helped me realize that that's what it is. Um,
Mm.
I think it's made me like, yeah, more comfortable with what it feels like. And now when I do episodes, a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
times, I feel like I just get into a place of like,
Mm-hmm.
channeling like my
Mm-hmm.
intuition, but also sometimes things from the collective. So I guess I'm like, there's sort of like an internal feeling. There's also a like, I want to say like opening the gates, like that
Mm.
I have to kind of allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that sometimes I don't. I'm like, no, like doesn't feel safe right now, or doesn't, I don't feel like I can do that right now.
Because intuition is a practice, right? You
Yeah.
don't just wake up one day and like, I'm like the most intuitive person that I am right
Yeah. And I think that like everyone has the ability or like has had experiences where their intuition is
now. I feel like
like I said,
human
like
beings are
nudging
just
them or like
intuitive.
something else. Yeah. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that again, like when we get told in our capitalist hellscape of like certain things or that like, oh, you again, you have to like prove it or
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff, it really like beats it out of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like helping people like awaken their intuition or find it or like feel into it and be like, oh, that's what that is. Like, I know that's
Mm-hmm.
true and I don't really know how I know it. And I like know what that feels like.
I know
That's
what it
like really
feels like
important to me.
when
Yeah.
you talk about tarot. It's like free diving. You know, so free diving is unlike scuba diving, is you go scuba diving is you have gear so that you can dive deep. Free diving is you build the strength of your lungs, you meditate, you get into this meditative state so that you can go deeper and deeper and just be in a state of zen, because that's how free divers can stay down in
Yeah.
the
And
sea
like
for like.
literally breathing, right? Like you have to regulate your breathing.
Yeah,
Um,
and like I feel like going into tarot is kind of like free diving. You cannot just plunge into the depths
mhm.
because your lungs will collapse.
Yeah.
You will get so
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And you need it helps to have someone who's free dived before to teach you, to show you the way so that you don't drown yourself. Because
Yeah.
it gets hard because like um it, tarot is a very personal experience, yes, but also it's a very community based experience. I don't think like I feel not I don't think I feel like tarot is best experience when you have community to share it with,
Yeah.
because like reading for your people, uh there are answers that you only can get from other people. Like we as as humans, we're always like trying to rely on ourselves to like, okay, what's the answer? I need to know the answer. I should know the answer. So it's always like me. It has to come from inside, which is fine because there are people who like to process information that way. But like with intuitive stuff, like with tarot and magic and the witchy occult stuff, a lot of the things that we stumble upon in the wild is an organic experience, something that isn't planned. It's very, oh my gosh, it'll give you goosebumps. Like
Yeah.
sometimes, like when I first started working with you, and you'd have like a tarot pull, and I'd like send Camille a telegram, like, you're the card pull. It made me cry. So
Yeah.
it's a very, like, sometimes we feel like the card that's pulled, feel like, oh, that's Camille's card. But no, when the card talks to you, regardless of who it's been pulled for, it will tell you. And that's how you know that your intuition is being tapped through
Yeah.
another person. Because again, tarot is a community tool. It's not just the answers are not just for you. Sometimes it's like a channel for other people to find the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's sort of like you're saying with free diving, that's kind of like there's a practice of it, and perhaps everyone would do the same thing at the beginning. And then, like, maybe
Mm-hmm.
some people are going to feel more naturally inclined to it than others, but it's still a practice where I think that, yeah, with tarot, a lot of people go through the like, oh, I found it, or like, I hear about tarot. I'm
Mm-hmm.
intrigued. I find a deck.
Mm-hmm.
I dabble. I start expanding that, like doing
Mm-hmm.
research or getting tarot
Mm-hmm.
readings. And then it kind of often involves later into like, oh, like you said, like now I'm in community or I'm reading for
Mm.
other people, where it's like this sort of blooming like from the
Like the full
inside
moon
out.
circle.
Yeah, the kind of like often it starts as a very internal process, I think, and very
Mm.
like personal. And then it can, yeah, kind of go to this big culmination if you let it, like if you're
Mm-hmm.
interested. And I know for me, like it helped me understand, or even like I would say even like believe in the tarot more when I started to like occasionally read for other people because it felt very like, oh, this is real. Like I don't ever pull that card for myself, but when I pull it
Mm-hmm.
for someone else, like they get very different cards, or the
Mm.
butterfly in the corner means something to them that like I don't know what that is. Like that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean anything to me, but that reminds them of like their grandmother, and that's like what's coming
Mm-hmm.
through to them. That it's like you don't, yeah, know like what's going to, yeah, I don't know. There's like a process of like allowing it, kind of like I was saying of like opening the gates, where it's like you
Mm-hmm.
can crack it open, you can like open it really wide and like let a lot of things through.
Mm-hmm.
But also like I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but like yeah, I have a hard time if I do more than 3 episodes in a day of recording them because I feel like often I will literally like I can't talk anymore. Like I'll get hoarse or I just feel like drained because I do feel like it takes energy, not just like mental energy, but like
Mm-hmm.
some other kind of energy to do that. I'm like opening the gates. And if I leave them open for too
It
long, like,
is a lot like opening the gates. I
yeah,
feel
it's
like
like,
that's
uh-oh,
also
like
why
lots of
you
stuff's
end
gonna
up in
come
a
through.
you end up in like a wait mode of like, I must prepare because when the gate is open, you cannot close it until it's empty.
Yeah, right. Where it's like if stuff's still coming through, it's like, oh. Yeah, and doing 5 episodes a week, sometimes there'd be like, oh, I really need to do like more than 3 episodes, but I've occasionally done 4, but I really like top out and like two's good. Two's like sweet spot. Because I like sometimes after I do one, I'm like, oh, I like sitting in this energy. I could do it for longer today. But it is just interesting that like, yeah,
You're
after.
actually the only client I've ever worked with that has like 5 episodes a week. And it was wild. Like, where does she get the energy?
Yeah.
From the moon.
Yeah. And sometimes just for my own stubborn commitment, it's definitely part of it. Or it's like 9 p.m. and I'm like, oh, I don't have an episode for tomorrow, so I
I
guess I'm
might
doing it
do it
right
out of
now.
spite.
Yeah. But yeah, like it, I mean, sort of to come full circle, like it does feel like it's never felt hard, even when I was doing it late at night or
Mm-hmm.
like on a Sunday when I don't normally work or other things, because it feels more like a special interest or like it's a thing that I already like to think about all the time. And doing it sort of on a podcast just means I'm like publicly committing into it. And so it always felt like, well, yeah, I I have an episode to do and like I want to do my commitment that I've said, even though literally no one is going to hold me to it. But that it just felt important to like push myself in that way to do it. So
Aw.
yeah. I think
Because
we
there
should
are
pull
answers that
cards
go
out.
out through you.
Yeah, and I think like yeah, it's been very fun to feel like sometimes I'm pulling a card and like I'm reading it and I'm like, this is what is coming through and like I don't know where that came from. Chantal, one of the other guests who creates decks for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, talks about that like just since her and I are like colleagues as well, that she's listened to episodes where I, like have her deck on it, and she's always like, I have no idea where you got that from. Like she'll just be like, I had never thought about that in this like way at all. Um, and some of it is just that, yeah, her and I have dialogue, so she'll share those things with me. But it's very cool to be like, yeah, I don't like I said, I'll like look back at things or listen to episodes where I'm like, yeah, I couldn't tell you like why that was exactly what like was making sense at that time, but like that's what it seemed like
The
people
card
needed to
spoke through
hear.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like sometimes as a therapist, I feel that way too, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'm holding space for someone else, like we are focusing on a certain thing, and that sometimes
Mm.
what comes to mind is like what they need to hear, even if I don't know why they need to
Yeah.
hear it. Or it's like, even if it doesn't make sense to me, it will make sense to them. Um, and then
Because
it's
sometimes
fun when they like
there are
share
like
that.
there are messages that we don't want to listen to unless it's from someone else. You're like, you know
Yeah.
how when you're like, I should do this thing because this is what I would tell another person to do, but you won't do it because you're the one saying it. But
Yep.
if someone else were the one to say it, so like if I tell myself like I need to do it, I need to do it, but I'm like I'm not doing it. But then I listen to your podcast, and then the card you post like do it, and I'm like,
But like that's 2 times now today that I thought I should do it. Yeah. But I think too, as like neurodivergent folks, there I know, and even chronic illness
yeah.
folks, that there's like such a like rebellion sometimes to being like, no, I don't want to do that thing that even if I said I'm gonna, I don't want to do it. Or even if like it's a great idea, just because you want me to now, I really don't want to do it. Now I want to do the opposite and never do it again.
Pathological demand avoidance.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's like very, it's hard to like trick yourself into like doing things sometimes because it feels like I have to trick myself into being like, you definitely don't have to. And so then
Mm.
I'm like, oh, okay, now I will.
If it's your
Um,
special interest, it don't have to.
yeah. And I do think that with the podcast, it felt like I, made this commitment. There is this sort of like public accountability of the fact that I'm releasing it. It's not just that I'm doing personal research and then I'm like, all right, check, done. It's like, well, people are gonna know if it doesn't come out. And even if no one says anything ever, like it will be out there or it won't be. That pretty much every time where I'd be like, oh no, I still have to do a podcast episode, or I'd be like, oh, I totally forgot, I need to do that tonight. It was always like, okay, like it didn't ever feel like oh, I don't want to. Um,
The podcast
sometimes
is
my
like, I need to
episodes,
broadcast the message.
yeah, sometimes it was like, okay, I'm gonna do a shorter episode, or like I'm gonna pull
Mm,
forth
yeah.
a topic that I already had planned since I don't know what I was gonna do tomorrow, or like let me do one that feels like more available right now, but it never really felt like Ew, I don't wanna because like, no one was making me do it except me, and and I do think that that part helped that
It
and I think
does.
and even the way like I knew I wanted to do a podcast about tarot, but it took
Mm-hmm.
me 6 months probably to be like, I guess I'm gonna do this on my own,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know what to call it, and I was like doing meditation one day, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like, well, you want to talk about everyday tarot, just call it everyday tarot. And I was like, oh, easy. And that's when it kind of was like, well, okay, like I'm going to do it every day. And I was like, well, let's not be too wild and do it literally every day. We'll be very reasonable and only do it Monday through Friday for an entire year. Um, and then
So
again,
reasonable.
yeah, was like, we won't work on the weekends, but like we won't put out an episode. But I will be sometimes on a Sunday night sitting for 3 hours doing podcasts because I haven't done it. But yeah, I just felt like, oh yeah, I want to do this because it kind of did come through as a message of like, just do it and do it every day in a way that you can and like try it for a year. See what happens.
I couldn't help myself and I decided to pull a card from my oracle
Yeah, I
deck.
was like, I feel ready to pull a card. Okay, what did you
I was
pull?
like, um, tell me what the Everyday Tarot podcast has in store for the people around them. And
Okay.
like, the card that I got.
What?
So the deck is from Caitlin Liz Fisher. She's also my client and
Yeah.
our friend. They not she, they. So they made the Emerald deck of intuition and the cards have D&D, so Dungeons and Dragons stuff. So there are weapons and class cards, and the one that I got is the sorcerer. I don't know if you can see. It's the sorcerer.
Ooh. It's
Magic.
yeah. It's like someone like touching the light and like a moon looking
So we
thing.
got the Sorcerer Upright. It says this card invites you to self validate and not look elsewhere for proof of your talent. People watching, listening to the Everyday Tarot podcast. It's inside you. Grab a deck. Join us. Because
Yeah.
the sorcerer has innate ability to produce powerful magic. This person is inherently skilled and talented. However, they may develop imposter syndrome and lack the confidence based on messages received in childhood and as they master their craft. Mm, mm. So, yeah, the people who were told that, oh, I don't need to use tarot, that's bad, or like, you're like a fake witch or whatever, like, you're a poser witch, don't use tarot. Don't listen to them. Just listen to the Everyday Tarot podcast because
That's
we will
right.
show you the way. We will show you the way.
I love that.
So
Okay.
nice.
Okay, I pulled from the Citadel Fantasy Oracle deck. I gotta look at my video so I can see. Okay, there we go. I pulled the Sentinel, but I pulled it reversed. So
Mm,
we're over here. But this is hilarious to me because who stands at the gates to let in things or not? The
that's
Sentinel.
Sentinel.
It literally says a figure stands at the gates, faceless in their armor. By their great shield, the Sentinel is a pinnacle of guardianship. They know the value of what to protect and what they will give in order to keep it safe. They have their orders and they will not leave their post, no matter what comes to pass. Um, it's extreme focused, knowing your position and purpose in the world. It says, you may feel as though forces have been conspiring to tempt you away from your goals, but do not let yourself be swayed. Balance unexpected situations with rational thought, and the outcome will be worth 100 times any distraction that might befall you. But I did pull it in reverse. So we're going with the reverse, which is more of being self-assured and confident of your position is a good thing, but don't let it make you arrogant or self-centered. Being solely focused on your own needs can blind you to the needs of others. Be aware that people may see you as being dominating or pushy. When dealing with those around you, remind yourself to be gentle and to listen to them. And I do just feel like this reversal is kind of like, okay, maybe we spent the last year like standing at the gates, or like there's benefit to allowing certain things in and like protecting yourself. And sometimes like we don't know what's going to happen when we open the gates.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that I think for myself with the podcast, it feels like, well, I did this for myself, and like I'm glad
Mm-hmm.
that other people get something from it too. But that it feels like, oh, I have to like allow other people's perception and just like their experience of the podcast to also be a part of the podcast. Um, so I'm thinking about that as I like move forward in the year and thinking about like, oh, how do I, yeah, get more in touch with my audience members or folks that listen to the podcast, or have more of that connection instead of necessarily feeling like I'm I decide when the gates are open versus not. It's
You
like, okay,
know,
maybe I'm
my
gonna crack the
mm,
gate and like
mhm.
see what's out there, see what wants to come to me as well. What were you
You
gonna
know
say?
what I interpreted as like,
What?
so you said that the sentinel guards the gate, right? And
Yeah.
earlier on in our conversation, you were saying how tarot is like opening the gate. So you can open it like a little bit or as wide as you want and let the energy flow. I feel like at this point, which is very um symbolic, I guess, because we're recording this episode like where I am, it's 12:31. So it's almost a new year. And
Wow.
like it feels like you don't need to guard the gate anymore. So the sentinel reverse is actually that the gate is open and now it's time for to let the people in at their own pace. Because now that you've set the foundations of the podcast and what you dream it to be and the kind of people you want to surround yourself with, like now you can just be. You can just you can just like oh keep talking about the stuff that like lights you up without over analyzing it with the belief that I need to do this perfectly or no one will listen to me.
Yeah.
There's no more guards now. There's no police.
Yeah. 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 Well, and that like you said, sort of like, okay, I created this particular structure for myself
Mm-hmm.
and like all these plans and ideas and seasons. It had to be 13 episodes a season or all these sort of like ideas about it. And now
Mm-hmm.
it kind of gets to like, oh yeah, I get to like literally let my guard down. And
Nothing
like I
bad will
said, kind of,
happen.
yeah, and be like, it's okay. Again, like, okay, maybe I think even just opening up the podcast to guests has really
Aw.
allowed me to see, like, oh, yeah, again, like, no doubt, but like other people are getting things from the podcast. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
cool. Because I think I have been sort of in like my own, I was gonna say my own echo chamber, which is like a podcast, but that like going forth, I want to, yeah, have that be more of like a conversation and less of, yeah, I'm doing, creating all the structure and everything. And then like other people get to see it. It's more like, no, like I want it to feel like it's more of a community and that I take input and I see what people are getting from tarot um, and that's been very fun, even just already to like talk to guests and see more of that.
It feels like a soft place to land being on your podcast.
Thank you for being here. I feel so happy, especially with the new year. It's like so funny that that's like what's happening. So yeah, if you want to connect further with Kitty, you can go to their Instagram at Silly Kitty Meows. If you want to work with them, you can find the link there. If you want to be a guest on the show, you can fill out the guest inquiry. Links for the decks we talk about will be in the show notes and on my website if you want to look at them or purchase them. And thanks for joining me today on Everyday Tarot. Just as a reminder, the podcast comes out daily Monday through Friday for all of 2025, and I will be changing the ending come 2026. You can email me, me at CamilleASaunders.com with your thoughts, questions, and more. All right, see you soon.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.